and welcome back to Survivor Hot Takes. It's the finale of Survivor 43 and everything that came with it. Joining me and Emily today, we have a smaller panel than we did last season. Of course, we have Sarah, Josh, and Hopi, and also joining us today is Hopi's husband, Travis. How are y'all doing?
Doing great.
Hey,
Andrew, we should definitely bring Travis into this and say, like, Trav, normally whenever we bring on a new guest, we ask them, what's your number one Survivor hot take? So give us a hot take of yours, an unpopular opinion throughout Survivor history.
Oh, man. So, for the record, I'm very new to Survivor. The Survivor world is kind of like a pandemic, like actually kind of post-pandemic thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a lot of it's a very like weird trauma actually surrounded by Survivor from my childhood, and then I reclaimed it. So yeah, but that's beside the fact. But anyway, so I don't have a whole lot of hot takes. I'm mostly just like I've watched the new era, and then also oddly enough, the season where Ethan's on one in the beginning. So that's like
Africa.
Africa, yeah, that's pretty much all I've watched, and then like half of that next season when Jenna won.
That's 3 seasons later.
Yeah, but I guess my biggest hot take right now, apparently, from looking at the internet and all that kind of stuff, is I stand for fire making.
Oh, really? Me too.
I think fire making is the great equalizer, and I definitely don't want it to go anywhere.
Well, I agree with you a lot, Travis, because even if we use from this last season with Jesse, like his only Hail Mary was that fire making challenge. He was not going to win a challenge, and he was someone that everyone was really rooting for to make it to the end, you know? But like he wouldn't have had that chance at all because all three of them would have gone against it, which was obvious. You know?
So Josh, we'll start with you, and we'll just pick up from the fire making thing. And first of all, thoughts on fire making before we get to the fire making for this season.
Yeah, I don't like it. I mean, yeah.
How dare you?
I guess I'm more of a purist, but the problem here's the problem. It's kind of a unintended consequence of fire making. So when great players were going out at the final three, what was Survivor's solution? We'll make it a final three instead of final two. Then what happens? People start going out at 4. Well, what's our solution? We'll create fire making, so that people can get through the final 4. But now what happens is in the season, since they made final 4 fire making into a regular part of the, show, the big people start to go home, not just at 5, but 6, 7, 8, because you can't let them get close. So I think we've had a lot less of like the big characters and fan favorites win the show since fire making has been instituted.
That's
Sarah?
really interesting.
Yeah, I am not a huge fan of fire making. I think it diminishes the final immunity challenge. Like no one really cares who wins final immunity anymore because it's all about the fire making. And as we saw with this season, no one really cared that Cassidy won final immunity. Like they just cared that Gabler won fire making. And I think it just takes a lot of the strategy away. I know there's strategy in picking who to go to fire against each other, but like I feel like the voting strategy and like just the emphasis on the challenges gets diminished with fire making. So yeah.
And kind of, Josh, I was thinking of you recently because, like, they were like, oh, like Eric Reichenbach, like he was giving up his immunity just like before it was cool, and we gave him so much crap like for so many seasons. And I thought of you immediately because that's really what kind of brought everyone back together.
The world will come around eventually. We'll be on the right side of history. I promise
you.
He
was doing it before it was cool, like the original trendsetter in fire making.
and I agree that. Jesse, there was no way Jesse's best chance was to go to fire because he would have been voted up 3-1. And I do feel like if they had not introduced fire making, as the end all be all final 4, I do feel like we would probably still get a lot of 3-1 votes.
Right.
I do, and this is why, like, I'm not an avid defender of the fire making, but I do see it from that end of, okay, well, they were going to go home anyway, so might as well give them a shot. But like Josh said, now they're starting to pick them off even earlier to not even make sure that they don't, which is
Right.
a testament to the first person we're going to talk about tonight, Jesse. The fact that Jesse was able to get to that point that so many others had been taken out at since season 35. The fact that Jesse was able to, get to Final Four with one vote cast against him because Carla was not going to let him get a perfect game. I think it's a testament to Jesse's game. So, Hopi, what were your thoughts on Jesse going into the finale? Did you think that he had a chance, or did you feel like he had to win that Final Four to, end it?
Yeah, I think that after picking off Cody, I think he had to. There was no other spot in which he could have picked off Cody, and it would have ended well for him. But I think it was just bad luck because that was too big of a move, and I knew that he was screwed unless he won immunity, which sadly challenges were not Jesse's strong suit. So I was pretty much positive that he was not going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And Josh, and going off of that, if he decides not to make that big move against Cody, let's say he brings Cody along to Final 5 and then makes that big move, do you still feel like that? Is there a way that Jesse can get through the rest of this game without making that move and make it to the end? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And I think he tried to do that with Carla. So the Final 5 vote was very interesting. And I love what Jesse was going for, which was try to figure out a way for Carla and I to get through this together. And his idea, right, was to try to target Cassidy. And so that therefore him and Carla could get through that. But I think what happened is Gabler, Cassidy, and Owen were so set on getting Carla out that they needed a third vote, or he needed to be able to play his idol on Carla and trust that she wasn't going to then vote for him. And so like they were two tigers locked in a cage. Like Carla and Jesse couldn't ever get to a place where I think they could like fully trust each other as two dangerous players in the show. And so then the other three were fully set on voting out Carla. So I think his like Final 5 plan didn't go exactly like how he wanted, but I think he was still thinking through that. So I think Jesse played near a perfect game. My philosophy in Survivor is get to the Final 4 as the biggest threat in the game. Give yourself 3 shots to get to the final 3. Either convince somebody like we've seen happen, like Tony getting brought by Wu or Tommy getting brought by Nora. It's a long shot, but that's still a shot. Or second, you win that Final 4 immunity. Or third, you win fire. So if the fire is like 50%, winning that immunity, let's say, even as a weaker player, let's say it's a 15% shot, and then getting brought is maybe a 5% shot. I mean, heading into the Final 5, he's already at a 60-70% chance of winning the game, and that includes everybody's win equity. So I think going there as the biggest threat is like totally a legit strategy, and he just unfortunately came up short.
Sarah, what is Jesse's legacy after this? Do you I know he didn't win, but would you put him in that Cirie, I hate saying this, but Russell category, or do you feel like we have to see him again?
I definitely think he is in my top 10 players of all time now. Like, his strategy was unreal. The fact that he was able to manage his threat level in a New Age Survivor season is incredible, because normally those players who are, guiding the strategy, guiding the votes, and just being the mastermind of the season, normally those players in New Age Survivor, they don't have a shot. Like, they go out before Final 4. So the fact that he was able to make it to Final 4 with everything that he did all season, with, having 2 idols and just, like I said, leading the votes pretty much every round, like, that's incredible. That's just like a huge feat in New Age Survivor. I kind of think his downfall was actually taking out Cody. Like, it needed to happen, but maybe not at 6. Maybe if he was able to do it at 5 somehow, because I think, he kind of backed himself in a corner with him and Carla being the last 2 remaining threats in the game, and Gabler, Owen, and Cassie, they were locked in as a 3. So it was like, I think he did great making it to Final 4, but I think Cody would have stuck with him. So it would have been interesting to see if he didn't take out Cody at 6, what would have happened.
Jesse and anyone else's top 10 players of all time now? He's top 15, top 20 for me already. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Elite.
This is the best one-time player that we've had first time play that we've had since Dom and Wendell, if we want to put them together. I mean, does anyone feel like we've had anybody of this caliber since 36?
I mean, probably place him higher than others, but I think Tommy is an elite Survivor player. Tommy, and I think I would say this, no question, Jesse, best Survivor player of the new era. That there's no argument there.
Period. Yeah, that's
including the winners.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and we all know this. Like most of the time, the best player doesn't win, and that's all right. It's just like sports. The best team doesn't always win the Super Bowl, or the World Series, or whatever. It's just circumstances that happen. Surrounding. Especially in this game, Jesse's not going to get past a certain point in the game because sooner or later people picked up on we can't sit with him at the end. So going off of that, let's talk about everyone else. Starting with the first boot of the episode, Carla. Emily?
Oh, what I'm just, I don't know. Like, I think that like for a while, I thought that she was like leading the lambs to the slaughter. If I need to quote Sandra here, I will, because she's a queen, But I think that, Jesse put her in, I would definitely credit this to Jesse, put her in a few different positions where she was made out to not understand or have like the social understanding of what was happening in the game, like back to back in a series. So I think that like, even if she made it to the end, I don't know how she would have been perceived by the jury at that point, if that makes sense, I have to tip my hat to her though, because the way that she was able to hold herself together at like while her body was quite literally falling apart, but through the entirety of that entire merge, amazing.
Yeah, at the beginning of the season, I thought Carla was what Jesse ended up being.
Yeah,
I thought
very
Carla
true.
was going to be that person, and I started hearing other folks on other shows and just online saying, some of the backlash that was against Carla, I thought was bullshit. But the people that were like analyzing the game and saying, "Oh yeah, Carla kind of fell off of a cliff once merge happened," I did feel like that was at least semi-accurate. It became very much the Jesse Cody show once the merge hit, and I'm interested to see because I do feel like Carla is one of those people that we'll probably see again. I'm interested to see if she sees the whole story or the way it was framed on TV and decide to do, play more of that opening game in the later part of the game, if that makes sense. Right. So Carla goes home. At this point, at the party that I was at, everyone had basically said it's going to be Carla and Jesse going back to back unless Jesse wins immunity. I don't think anybody at the party thought that Jesse was going to make it if he didn't win immunity. But Travis, Hopi, we get to that Final Four fire making, and Cassidy has this big decision. So first of all, how did you guys feel about Cassidy in this episode? Not talking about Final Tribal yet. What'd you think about Cassidy in this episode? And do you think that she made the right decision putting Gabler against Jesse?
You can go first.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about this before it got here. I personally think that she made the wrong decision putting Gabler in there. I think she should have put Owen. I'm definitely not one of those people that thinks like, oh, she should have put herself in fire, because it's like, come on, you won the challenge, you won immunity. Like that's, you don't have to do that. I think that's stupid. Like if you have immunity, take the immunity. Like don't put yourself, especially since like I got the impression that she was not really good at fire making anyway. So if you already think that you're going to be weak at that, just don't do that. But I think she should have put Owen in there. I think, just taking a look at the edit and looking like hindsight 2020 and stuff, it just seemed like Gabler played, with the edit and, just everything, a much more stronger strategic social game. And so, when he goes in there and he breaks a record on fire and stuff, like she's padding his stats doing that, you know what I mean? And kudos to Gabler too for playing like this, oh man, I'm eating this sliver of coconut and I'm trying to do everything I can to survive in this game and I can't survive another day. And he just goes in there and breaks a freaking record and stuff like that. Like that was like a total, like that was like sandbagging it like crazy. Like that was wild. But yeah, hindsight, she should have put Owen in there. I think if Owen would have won it, I don't think that really pads his stats up that much. I think either of them are going to, beat Jesse. I don't think that Jesse was just looking at his technique and stuff like that.
He had heart.
He had heart. Yeah. 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 I definitely wouldn't want to be in a stranded alone. He wouldn't be going on Netflix as alone. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think, well, ultimately, I think it should have been Owen that she put in there. I think that would have given her a better shot. I think once Gabler did what he did, I think that was just icing on the cake at that point.
And
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, this is moving on to, I was going to talk about how I felt about Cass before Final Tribal, so you can go if it's about that.
I was just going to say, like, I think that I understood Cass's perspective, though, because I think that in her way, she thought that she and Owen strategically were kind of neck and neck. They were, like, I know they didn't really show this a lot, like, on the show, but, like, Cass and Owen were very, very tight throughout a lot of the show, so I think that a lot of the time whenever you see two people working together, you assume their gameplay is very similar, and you can kind of, like, assimilate them both in one unit. So I think in her mind, everyone had Gabler as their third person they were going to bring along. He was going to be the GOAT no matter who was at the final three. He would absolutely be there. We all saw that too, So I don't know. I feel like she was kind of at a pigeonhole. Like I feel like I think that she was right to be able, and she owned that ability to be able to hold her own immunity. She earned it, right? But I think that was the only way that she could have won at that point, because I think that's what the jury wanted to see,
Yeah. We all got Gabler. What can I say? But to answer your question, Drew, about like how I felt before the final jury, I feel like she got blinders, and like this is all from the perspective of you're tired, you're hungry, you're thirsty, whatever. But I think it was Owen trying to make a case for Jesse, Cassidy was like, no, Carla. And I think she felt so betrayed from Carla, like playing the game. And it was a cutthroat game that Carla tried to play. I think that really like stuck with her, and then she was so confident in herself that she didn't. I think that no one took Gabler as seriously as they should have, from what we've seen, and I think that Cass was so hell-bent on Carla that I think she really missed an opportunity.
Sarah, do you think that if Owen wins, let's say Owen goes in fire against Jesse and Owen wins fire, does Owen win?
No, I don't think so. I think going into Final Tribal, Gabler was underestimated. So the fact that he was able to come out and, show all his strategy and even just like play the humble role of being like, like this was my biggest move, the Ellie move. That's the move that I made, but that's really it. Like just owning what happened. I think that's what the jury was looking for at the end of the day. And it didn't really matter what Owen or Cassie said. I think Cassie was in a really tough position because she had to go out and like try to own moves that the jury was never going to give her credit for, because they were always going to think it was Carla and Cassie and James working together. And, the jury was able to talk. And I think they all decided that they had made all the moves and Cassie didn't make the moves. And so she kind of just was in a really tough position where it didn't really matter what she said. They weren't really going to respect her game because they were taking credit for most of the moves. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, Gabler still wins, even if Owen wins fire. I think it just didn't really matter what Owen or Cassie said.
And some of y'all have pointed it out, and a lot of people online. I'm guilty of it on this show and others over the course of the season with the whole GOAT thing. Something that I have always, until this season, I've always said there's no such thing as a GOAT because goats have won. It's the GOAT strategy, whether they do it on purpose or not. And it's ironic that this was the season I finally started saying, oh yeah, like Gabler's a GOAT. You're just going to bring him to the end. But it's a testament to this and we're gonna go down the Gabler road in a second here, y'all, and we'll start with Josh. But everyone feels like the game should be played a certain way, period. Like, oh, you have to do this, and you have to do that, and you have to have your resumes, and you have to do all of this. When in reality, like Josh pointed out earlier, you really have to put yourself in the best spot to get to 3 and then woo the jury. We've seen people go in there and shit the bed, but we've also seen people go in there and win a jury over. And so, people referring to others as GOATs, cool. If I was playing, please absolutely drag me to the end, because I know that I can out-talk most people. And I'm a great bullshitter. So I feel like I could pull like a Chris Doherty thing. But, with Gabler and with a lot of Natalie White, a lot of these people that are being perceived as, people that are not deserving or whatever, it's like, yeah, we'll find out how these people perceive us. Not the audience and not anything that's happened beforehand. Let's see how these people perceive us tonight. So, Josh, what is your opinion on Gabler being perceived as this GOAT? And do you actually believe that it was, he won, whatever, but did you feel like he was a GOAT, even though you were a Gabler's going to win person?
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's a tough question, because it's really hard. And I will say, this is, I think, the most confusing ending of a Survivor season ever in a long time. I mean, and what I'm saying is, like, we really don't understand the motivation of the jury. Like, even with like surprising wins at the end, like Marianne's last year, Marianne's win over Mike, like, could have been very confusing as well. It was, it was like very shocking, because Mike came in like as a really, really like good winner contender. And then Marianne, like, she preached the sermon, she got out there and she told them everything about her game. She had the secret to share. And yeah. And so I think the reason why this feels different than Marianne's win, not only because Marianne was like a fan favorite, everybody's rooting for her, but it's because I think that Gabler, like, I don't think that people fully had a cohesive narrative as to why Gabler like should win, and were able to like summarize that in a really neat package. And I think that, so yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, but I just think that that's why this feels so confusing. And I think that the Gabler win was much more subtle and nuanced. And, I think that's also why the internet's crazy, is because, social media and the internet doesn't do well with nuance and subtlety. So, yeah. So anyways, there's a lot more to unpack, but that's just where I'll start.
And I feel like Gabler kind of got the female winner edit. They edited him as if he was Erica from 41. And I think that the other thing is, and listen, I understand that these people have their personal lives and everything. I feel like the backlash on the internet, a lot of it is coming from his personal life. When people are, I feel like if Gabler was Mike Gabler from Connecticut, who is cousins with the Kennedys and everything, he would have been perceived a lot better than some of the tweets that he likes on the internet. And I feel like everyone went into the finale saying, we don't want Gabler to win because of all the stuff outside the game. And I think that's why they started attacking the jury afterwards, specifically Carla. I wonder why. Oh, you're a disgrace to the LGBT community and all this other stuff. It's like, or maybe she was just out there playing a game and she voted for who she thought deserved to win, or maybe she just voted against the other two. No matter what it was, she voted the way that she felt like at that time. It did not matter how, what he did in his life outside of the game. And that's why I love Survivor. And I feel like that's why more people should, pay more attention to the actual game than the people's social media, because you have to see it from the eyes of the people playing there. And I know I'm getting really preachy, but it's true. It's true. I wasn't a Gabler person, but I also, and someone, it was Cindy. Cindy texted me and said, "Oh, in this case, you can't say a win is a win." I'm like, I can, because he won. No matter if I like it or not, he won the game. And so, Emily, why do and I think the answer is obvious, but why do people feel so vehemently against Gabler, specifically in the season? Where's all this hatred coming from, and why is it also being directed at Carla?
I think that it's like it's kind of, well, I'm gonna say like about threefold maybe. I think that, look, I talked about this with Hopi earlier. You know, we thought that it was like kind of hypocritical for people to be mad at a woman who's LGBT, you know, like for supporting someone else's beliefs. You know what I mean? Like that's not what she did at all. You know, she just voted for the person that she thought who won the game, and she shouldn't be the person to blame and the person who speaks for the 7 other people or the 6 other people who voted. Like, why aren't they blaming everyone else? You know, I think that it's also, for me, like it was a lackluster win for me, and I think that, you know, because what Josh said, like, we just didn't get a really comforting story and really any narrative. And I mean, honestly, there was a lot more that was kind of rooting against him, just like for purely like entertainment purposes. You thought a lot of people, like, a lot of their perceptions of him. I think about like the one time that he won immunity, and everyone's like, he's like, this one's for Idaho, and like Carla's like cackling, and you can see people are like rolling their eyes. The Palm Frond situation, like I'm like, who is this kook? You know, like, so for me, like there was much more of a narrative of him being like the sidekick as opposed to the victor. So like am I happy that he won? Sure. Like I'm happy. Always happy that there's a win. Am I excited about this particular winner? Am I going to be talking about this for years to come? I'll be talking about it literally today, and I probably will never talk about it again. That's how I feel.
Sarah?
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't really have one way or the other to say about Gabler's winning. Like, you know, he did it. He convinced the jury. Like, that's what it takes to win Survivor, is convincing a jury, and he did that. I think a lot of the hatred is coming from the jury being bitter. You know, like, people are viewing the jury as bitter, which, like, in 26 days, like, Jesse was only out for 24 hours. Like, do you expect him to make a rational, logical, thought out decision, you know, that he really put a lot into it? Like, you have to give the jury some grace, you know, like, they might be a little bitter, and that's okay. That's part of Survivor. Like, they just got blindsided, or, you know, like, you have to give them a little bit of grace because you're not in their shoes. You don't know what, you know, the lack of food and the lack of water, like, all of that has to do on your body. And so, you know, I think there's that whole debate about whether the jury should discuss who they're voting for before or not, because they used to, you know, sequester the jury. And that's a big debate because now they don't, and they do like the jury table and they all talk about their vote. And I kind of like the idea of sequestering the jury because I think, you know, a lot of times it's easy to be influenced and believe things from the jury members that may not have been necessarily true. So yeah, there's a hot take on that, if you should sequester the jury or not.
And going off of that, Cassidy is now in this robbed goddess category for some folks on the internet. And, you know, Cassidy was fine this season. I enjoyed her. She was probably like my 5th or 6th favorite character at any point during the season. But people are putting her very high on a pedestal, where I feel like with Jesse gone, Cassidy was just the best option for the fans. I don't feel like, you know, everyone's saying, oh yeah, the jury was super bitter towards Cassidy. It's like, okay, maybe not, but like, it's not like the jury being bitter towards some folks. You know, it was, I hate saying it like this because I liked Cassidy, but it was just Cassidy. It wasn't like it was Jesse sitting there and people saying and being bitter at him. It was, okay, we've got these 3 people that are not Jesse. We're gonna vote for one of them, but it's not because we hate the other 2. It's just more, you know, who did the best at Final Tribal, who could say they made a move that actually was theirs. And as the biggest Ellie fan on this panel and probably the country, the fact that he got her out when he did, as bad as it was, I did think that was a great moment. I kept saying it's going to be Ellie versus Gabler at some point. And so when he finally got rid of her, it's like, okay, I just didn't realize that was going to be
I just
the
keep,
big move.
yeah.
that was
Well, I
said.
keep cracking up because I remember like right before the show aired, like before the finale aired, you and I did our recording like right before for like the penultimate, and we were like, okay, well, we know that Gabler's going to make it to the end, and we know that he's going to talk about this Ellie move and that being his big move. There's no way that the jury's going to eat that shit up. And what did the jury do? They ate that shit up, and like that's like,
I was making a list. I showed Hopi and Emily this. I was like working, and I was like making like, oh, I'm gonna make this like list of the Survivor New Era like superlatives and like my top 10 and stuff. And I made a list of the biggest doofuses, and it included like JD. It included Daniel from last season. But then I also loved Brad from season 41, and shout out to No Buffs. He looks a lot like Bill Walton, so they called him Beef Walton and stuff. And I was thinking, oh yeah, and Gabler is the like evolution of Beef Walton. He played the game that Brad should have played and stuff like that. And then the Survivor finale comes around, and it's just like the game got flipped. It was totally different from the whole perception, and then he's throwing out this like, I'm going to give the whole winnings to charity and stuff like that, like right at the 11th hour. And I'm just like, I totally stand with him, like, you know, doing like obviously doing that. I think that's great. And then not talking about it to Tribal and stuff, but like I would have loved for that to be like maybe 3 episodes earlier. That's a secret that he has with production and stuff like that. And I could have started taking him a little bit more seriously than like 5 minutes before the episode ends.
Yeah.
and like in that ride or die alliance, I wanted to highlight Kim's comment.
Yeah, I was going to get to that, but
do it. Yeah. My bad.
Yeah,
sorry.
What's going on?
Go ahead.
I just want to jump on that. I think that the Gabler editing, you know, which is really confusing, and this is where I come in as the world's preeminent Gablerologist, and I can happily explain some of this to you all. Some Survivor seasons are the season is the winner season, and it's unquestionably their story from beginning to end. There's minor characters that support them, but they're the star. This was not that season. This was Jesse's season from start to end. Maybe, and then there's another category of Survivor seasons, which is a story about a friendship, a partnership, a duo, JT and Steven. You know, there's those seasons as well where, you know, you could argue, so you can maybe say this is Jesse and Cody season, but what you can't say is this is Gabler season. And I feel like what they did in the storytelling of this season was say, we're going to let it be Jesse season. He's going to be, you know, like subtly just taking people out left to right, cold-bloodedly just chopping Janine, Dwight, stealing their idol. Nobody knows about it. Then he cuts Cody, his closest ally. He takes out Carla at 5. Like he's getting to the end, and then we're just going to break your heart. And we're going to make this like a Greek tragedy where you're just going to be left empty, and then Gabler wins. And I think that's the story. I mean, I think like Gabler winning is kind of like the denouement, the after part of the story of this season. Like it's not really like part of the main arc of what happened. And so I just think like that's how I was so on to Gabler as the winner, was because I was like, if Jesse doesn't win, like if Jesse wins, like this is just like this is going to be such a fun finale. Everyone's going to be loving it. If Jesse doesn't win, I think the only thing that makes sense is that this weird guy wins. Like he's just weird. It's a weird ending. The jury thinks it's weird, but it's what they have to do. And you know, and then I think what just is like the cherry on top is that he donates the money to charity. And it just, for me, it makes me feel so much better. Now, I understand there's a lot of thoughts about which charity it should go to, and do veterans. There's so much money to veterans. Are there other needs? Like I've heard those things online. Like I don't care. This guy's giving away all of the money. So even if you like don't like him and don't think he deserves $1 million, like neither does he. He's like, I don't need $1 million.
He doesn't even have it anymore. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I just think it's like a wacky ending to this season. And I don't think they tried to make it anything other than just like this tragic story for Jesse and then just a wacky like 30 minutes afterwards.
And I think one of my favorite things is at the end of the day, like Kim K, Gabler broke the internet.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, he broke Twitter at least.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys,
yeah.
like, I just want to ask the panel, like, so I already know what Hopi and Travis were doing because y'all were with me, but like, I need to know your exact thought process while you were watching like one Cassidy and then Gabler. I need to know what everyone else was thinking because I was like, I am too drunk for this. Like, there is no way.
Yeah, I had the same feeling that I had when I watched South African Survivor season 6. I don't know if anyone has seen
never
that
seen
season.
it, no.
But there's a very shocking winner, and I did not think I'd ever have that feeling again. And so when I was sitting there, I was like, no way. Like I was convinced Cassidy was gonna win. I did think it was gonna be close though, but I thought she was gonna win. So
I mean, to be honest, I was annoying as hell. I was watching with 4 people, and the 3 of them thought that either Owen or Cassidy was going to win heading into Final Tribal Council, and I was like, guys, just watch. Gabler's going to win. He's going to win. And then Final Tribal Council happens, and we're like, okay, what are the votes going to be? They're like, I think it might be Cassidy. I'm like, no, guys, Gabler, watch this. He's going to win. And then they reveal the votes, and then I still was shocked. Like, I even though I was like telling people it's going to happen, I still was just like I couldn't believe that he still won, even though I was like on the Gabler galleon.
I'm gonna keep Kev's question on the screen because I do want to get to it. I was at a Survivor party out in New York City, and I was hanging out with Billy Garcia most of the night from Micronesia, and
Cook Islands, sir.
Oh yeah, Cook Islands, Micronesia. I don't know why I have Micronesia in my head. Oh, because Parvati, duh. Cook Islands. Sorry. I was hanging out with Billy Garcia for most of the night, and he just kept saying, I feel like Gabler's going to. I'm like, Billy, you probably just know. He's like, no, I just feel like these people are going to do this because, and he laid it out for me. And then there was one other drunk guy there that kept saying, Gabler's going to win. I'm like, dude, I will buy you whatever shot you want if Gabler wins. He was like, would you really? I'm like, dude, trust me on this. Gabler's not winning, so it doesn't matter. And I've sent Josh and Sarah and Emily this video of as it happened, and I ended up turning my camera off after the 3rd Gabler vote because I just could not believe what I was seeing. The air actually got sucked out of the room.
All I heard was this high-pitched Andrew voice going, "What are you doing? What are you doing?"
And it was true. Like I could not believe what was going on. And then I stayed at the bar for a couple hours later with a few of the people that were there. And every now and then someone would say, hey, you remember that time that Mike Gabler won Survivor? And it wasn't anything other than what we had seen on TV. And that's why when I got back to my hotel room and I get on Twitter and I see these people like hating this and saying it's the worst season ever, and we will get to that. Everyone saying it's the worst season ever, it's the worst winner and all this. Like, all right, I just didn't think he was gonna win. I don't hate the guy. I don't hate the season. You know, he's not some great winner or anything, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, that's what it was. So Billy Garcia called it.
That's the greatest flex of all time that you watch the finale with Billy Garcia. I don't want that to pass over us. Like, that's amazing.
I saved it on my Snap story forever. He's just sitting there saying, yeah, I called it. I'm like, all right, Billy, we're good. All right. Question. Do we think we didn't see the Ride or Die Alliance because it appeared to be a man's alliance? There was already so much talk about misogyny on the season, so they edited it out. I say yes. Because when they I thought that I was just chalking up to maybe I'm drunk at the time. I don't remember ever hearing about a Ride or Die Alliance. And then I get on the internet and it turns out that no one had heard about a Ride or Die Alliance. And now there's this good meme going around of Rob Sesternino.
Since when?
So I'll just touch on everyone. So Sarah, we'll start with you. Why do you think we didn't see more of this Ride or Die Alliance?
I think, yeah, that's part of it. But I also think because they didn't really talk much, so there wasn't really a lot of content because, they were saying, they were like, yeah, like, I think Gabler said, me and Cody like walked on the beach early in the morning at like 5 a.m. and we just kind of had our little chat and then we checked back in right before we went to sleep. Like, they were very discreet about it. And I don't think there was a lot of filming to be had. So I think that's also another reason because they just didn't talk much. Like, but like you know, a lot of alliances, they're always coming together, but like they were very secretive about it. And like people didn't even know how close Cody and Jesse were until later on into the season. So yeah, I think that's another reason.
Josh?
Yeah, it's there was this moment in hindsight where Cody and Gabler were talking, and Cody's like, we're set, and Gabler turns to him and he's like, ride or die. And I thought it was so intense, like, so it stuck in my head. This is like 2 or 3 episodes before the finale, but I didn't realize that was like the name of their alliance or whatever. I thought Gabler was just like being super weirdly intense, kind of like his, like, you know, his talks about Vietnam, like scouting in the jungle or whatever. Like, that's how I perceived what was happening. In hindsight, I think it was a little sprinkle of the ride or die, but all that to say that wasn't really showing it. And I do think that they were trying to, again, I don't think they wanted us to take Gabler as a winner seriously. So I'm just setting aside the misogyny part right now, like, which is never good to do as a man, but I'm sorry, I'm going to do that for the conversation.
As you should. Anyway.
No, but I'm just saying, like, in general, I don't think they were trying to like they were not trying to feed us Gabler content that like he could win. Even his like confessional that I think was like maybe his best winner quote was like about being the assassin, you know, like he's not going to show up to the castle with an axe. He's going to poison the king's bowl. Which I thought meant he was just going to take Jesse out at fire. Like, I thought that's what it was like. I'm going to assassinate the king, and then, you know, whatever happens, the final 3 happens. But I think, okay, bringing misogyny back into the conversation, I do think that in general, like, there is a lot of subconscious biases that happen. And I do think that regardless of whether the editors thought that they were like, they wanted to prevent this conversation of misogyny happening, I think in general, like, they probably just didn't want us to associate Gabler with kind of like the strategist of the season. And I think that's where the conversation of misogyny comes in for me, is like, was Cassidy unfairly judged compared to Gabler, who both played under the radar games in different ways, and is a women's way of playing that more subtly, judged differently than the way that Gabler as a man was playing it. And that's where it's just really confusing, because we just didn't get a lot of that information on how the jurors were judging their games against each other. And I think we're gonna have to wait for like deep dives and stuff. And it's already messy because, like, you know, apparently some of the cast don't speak to each other, or like, you know, people were liking tweets that were, you know, hating on some of the other cast. So it's just like, it just is like a really, really confusing jury to make sense of. And I think that, like, the question of like, was there some subconscious bias on the jury's part toward Cassidy as a woman sitting there as a finalist? Like, I would say that's a really, really good question, but I would not feel comfortable pointing out and saying definitively, yes, there was yet.
Travis, Hopi?
So this one's really complicated for me, for a lot of reasons, obviously. Because I want to say, like, yes, I do think that there was some subconscious misogyny, as it takes years and intense work to undo those things and to unlearn the way we look at the world in which we were taught. I also, like, have to trust, like, Carla and Noelle in the decision that they made, because they are 2 insanely smart women, and trusting what they are doing. And I think if we're going to talk about misogyny, we also have to talk about cultural appropriation. And as much as the producers didn't want us to really, or them to talk about misogyny, no one really brings up that Cody used an entire culture as a personality shield, in a sense, right? Like, he's a white guy from the Midwest, like, mahaloing and alohaing his way through the season. And as that is my culture, I found that deeply offensive, because there's no one talks about it, right? Like, and I'm sitting there, and I don't know if it's the way production edited the film, it came across like that was his kind of personality trait as a player. And I had huge issues with it. And so I think that this was such a weird season because of this misogyny as well as cultural appropriation. Trav?
Yeah. I mean, again, as a male, I don't have I can't say definitively like Josh was saying and stuff, but kind of the way I read it, I agree with Jay in this. I think they see the episodes, they're edited months in advance. They can't totally capture the discourse that's going on the internet and stuff. So I actually don't think really that was shielded because of any kind of misogynistic kind of discussion or anything like that. I think kind of what Josh was alluding to. I think they wanted a representation of how the game was being played and stuff like that, and they wanted to show Gabler as this silent assassin, and they were going for this, like, they want you to get to the end and be like, oh, I'm so shocked that Gabler won and stuff like that. As much as I want to know that beforehand, they also got to create a nice, exciting, entertaining show and stuff like that too. So, but the being so secretive and them going out and doing their Tai Chi 5 minutes before, talking 5 minutes before everybody wakes up and doing these secret, fireside chats and stuff like that. I think they wanted to get a representation of that out there. So, but yeah, I don't think that really, personally, don't think that really played into the way that it was. We didn't see the ride or die. So,
Emily?
I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I've been thinking about, like, all you guys brought up, like, a lot of really great points. And I think that, like, the one thing I was thinking of is, like, it was evident by the edit that they chose to send to all of us and to show with all of us that people didn't take a lot of Gabler's gameplay or his own existence seriously, I mean, like a lot of the time you see like edits, people like rolling their eyes and like being like, hey, well, Gabler, like, what is he doing? Like, and so it makes me question, like, why did they still choose to take his more seriously than Cass's, So I go back and forth with that because I think that Cass played a little bit more of like a serious game in terms of just like her interpersonal relationships and her social relationships. And she was not someone that they perceived as someone that they couldn't take seriously. She was still someone they didn't want to take to the end. So how come all of a sudden she wasn't a threat anymore? Or how come they didn't deem her as a threat anymore by the time she made it to the final three? I think that like this definitely was like a pattern. I mean, like, and we talk about like unconscious bias a lot, like on this specific season, because it was, as of course the pattern always follows that it's a woman of color who's always voted out first, which is like so unfortunate and like not real, like it just doesn't feel real, but like we saw so mmany times where there was like boys clubs, like Ride or Die was a boys club. Like there were no girls in the boys club, right? Like there were so many other alliances that they automatically deemed women not appropriate to be a part of. Does that make sense?
No,
So I don't know how I feel about it. I'm a little bit 50-50 on how I feel how that played at the end.
We just don't have enough information. I just feel like that's what's hard. It's a really confusing ending because they didn't show us any explicit like discrimination. But like there's questions when a woman loses in the final three, like that should be asked of like, what was their subconscious, unconscious bias? I'm just saying like people harassing them and saying it's like conscious or like, that it's just like that gets out of hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just think that like, it's fair to ask the question. And I think it should be asked of like, were they fairly treated as a woman? Because we've seen plenty of times where, especially like the older mom figures on Survivor who get unfairly judged for being like more nurturing by nature. And then they're like more like harshly judged for being cold-blooded like a man would be. And I think like that's like clearly like sexism and misogyny at play that have cost maybe some women $1 million in this game. And I think that those things
that Lil should have won Pearl Islands.
Oh yeah, voting for Sandra was so misogynist. You were a misogynist if you picked a different woman to win. No, I'm just saying like people like Dawn come to mind. Like of just like she played the exact same game as Cochran and got like very little credit because they saw her as a mom figure. And I just think so. I'm just saying like that is always present in some way, shape, or form. And I think it's fair to ask that question. We just literally don't have that information. We just like don't know much. The way that they edited the show, it just was like really unclear as to why Gabler won.
And it also go ahead, Obi.
Are you sure?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, thanks. And I think it's also like this conversation, I think a lot of people are forgetting that there are women on the jury who are empowered and confident and intelligent.
Sure.
And so I feel like when everyone centers this conversation around the males' vote, it's still taking away power from the women that voted. And so I just want to lift that up as well, like in continuing your conversation, Josh, that like I think we're just scratching the surface of such a deep issue, and I think the internet is also just scratching the surface of it as well. You go, Em.
Oh, I was just gonna kind of touch base with Josh too, because Josh mentioned like a few really important people, like and a few like really important final twos and final threes, you know, and even like a lot of people forget about like the OG Borneo, you know, Kelly Wigglesworth. Like after she was interviewed, they were like, "What the heck happened? Like, how did you lose to Hatch?" And the exact thing she said was, two different men afterwards came up to me and they were like, you know, well, I voted for Richard Hatch because I didn't want to see myself losing to like a 22-year-old young woman. Like I didn't want to be, you know, and like people don't, I don't want to say that no one talks like that now, but I think that a lot of the time people are so scared to say how they feel because they can be canceled so quickly, you know? And so I think that obviously there's just so much that goes into a vote like this, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, and I will say credit to Gabler, and I've gone back and rewatched the episode, you know, sober and by myself, and I did feel as a person that puts a lot of stock into people's charisma, I did feel like he was the most charismatic of the three.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I do feel like he played he did all the greatest hits. He got them to laugh. He got some type of emotion. And I do feel like even if it was just that, I have my opinions on who I thought should have won, whatever. But I do give credit to Gabler for what he was able to do in that situation, especially with being looked at as a joke for so long, not only from us, but from what we're seeing on TV from a lot of the people that he's playing with. Which leads with my last thing. The internet and these fucking fans. As someone who just watched all 42 seasons in 42 days, cheap plug, I've seen some shitty Survivor seasons, not only just in my history, but just recently. I know what's shitty and what's not. 43, me and Emily have sat here and I followed at least Sarah and Josh on social media, so I kind of have a gauge of how you kind of felt about it. 43 for me was meh. It was, if I were to watch it again, I would probably put it in the lower 20s for me. What bothers me is there are a lot of folks that are saying worst winner ever, worst season ever, and they're sticking to their guns days after the season ended. I understand in the moment you're upset and you feel like you have to speak like this, but the fact that there are people, especially people that have played the game, no name, there are people that have played the game that are still saying this almost a week later. We're going to start with Sarah. We're going to work our way around. Sarah, what are your thoughts, overall thoughts on the winner and the season?
Yeah, I agree. I would put it in low 20s. I don't think it was super impressive. I think Jesse is like the highlight of this season. So Jesse and himself kind of makes the season like not as low for me. But I think just because of the edit, like we weren't really rooting for Gabler as a winner. So like the fact he won, we're just kind of like, meh. Like it's not like negative or positive. It's just kind of there. And normally like the really good seasons are the ones that you're rooting for the winner and then they win and you're like, yes, like, like that's kind of how I felt more so like with 42, like I was more rooting for Marianne and then she won and I was like, yay, like it makes you feel good as a viewer at the end of the season. But with this season, it's just kind of meh. It is very confusing still. And I think we'll find out more about it as more interviews come out. And I think we're just kind of like, okay, but I definitely do not think it's like the worst winner, the worst season. I think people are overreacting for sure. I think, was Cassie robbed? Like, in a way, I think she was because, like, she was seen as one of the threats. So the fact she got to the end, that's impressive. That should be commendable. Like, I don't know why she didn't get as much credit for that as she did. But, you know, I think at the end of the day, Survivor is just about convincing a jury, and Gabler did that. And like, yeah, I think he was a solid winner for what he had to work with. And I don't think there should be as much hate as there is. But yeah, I would agree. Low 20s.
Hopi, Travis.
Yeah. You go first. Yeah, I mean, I genuinely enjoyed the season. You know what I mean? I obviously don't have 43 whole seasons to go off of, but just going off of, you know, the seasons in the new era, I think obviously, like, if anything, I think the beginning episodes, I was a little like, okay, where are we going with this? Like, and you know, starting, and once we got into the merge and stuff like that, we started to see like James get out and, you know, having all of that and stuff. I thought it started to pick up, but it definitely took a little long for things to get going in there. So, I mean, that, and in that way, I would kind of dock it a little bit compared to the other seasons and stuff. But I think, yeah, again, I think, like I've said, like, I think hindsight 2020, taking a look at everything, I think Gabler is a strong winner. I think he deserved that win. I think anybody that plays Survivor, I personally agree with Owen when he says that there's no accidents in winning Survivor. I think he won fair and square and everything. I think ultimately what did Cass in was, I mean, again, her interpersonal relationships just weren't as strong as, you know, we might have thought and everything, and Gabler's was just stronger. I wish, again, Jesse was better at challenges. I think that was his squeaky leak there, man. Like, I think, I really wish that he would be better. But I enjoyed it a lot. I don't have a whole lot to go off of, but you know, it was another fun Survivor season, and you know, I'm not going anywhere. I don't see where all the backlash is coming from. Like, again, might have a lot more of a laid back kind of stance on it. You know, I just want to have fun watching a great show with great friends and stuff like that. But ultimately, I enjoyed it, and yeah, you know, it was a lot of fun. It's great.
Yeah, for whatever reason, like, hearing all of the absolute hatred coming against one person has been really, like, it's been making me so emotional, because I feel like it is just so unwarranted. Like, if we, like, macro look at this, it's a freaking TV show. And it's one I enjoy and love very much. But I don't believe that the internet should bully one person just because they don't like the result, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like there's a lot more constructive conversation to be had. I also feel like, from what I saw on TV, it just seems like Gabler has a really pure heart, and that he was encouraging to the very end. And like we talked about earlier, he donated money. Money's money. It helps someone in need. The world needs more of that. I agree. It was not my, like, yeah, the season's riveting, let's go. So, like, I would watch it again maybe, but it's not like my first one that I rewatch. I still have so many other seasons to get through still. It was very, like Sarah said, very confusing. I was joking this whole time, we're going to get Gablered, and turns out we all did, every last one of us. I think, I don't know, at the end of the day, it's a really fun bonding experience. I got to meet some cool new people on this panel. I get to see my best friend every week, and I get to go to New York sometimes. It's you, Drew. But yeah, I think it was a mess season, and I don't know, just be nicer. I didn't mean to turn to a PSA, but my goodness, it's been hard to watch.
Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I there's a popular meme that's been around for a while of, like, you know, like, everybody who comments the same things on Twitter looks like the same person. It's like a white guy with a beard and a hat and sunglasses. And so I remade a version of that meme, but instead of them all looking like that, it's all people with Cassidy as their profile picture. And it attracted, it's kind of like kicking the hornet's nest. They all came after me. But
Josh
the thing
has
is,
trolls now.
Yeah. You congratulated me on having trolls now, which, yeah, I appreciated that. But it's just like, there's a lot of people out there trying to defend Cassidy, and I understand it. It's like I kind of like I want to tell them like I'm on your team. Like let's examine this critically and take a magnifying glass to try to find as much, wherever there might be sexist motivations or misogynistic tendencies. Like I am totally for that. But one, let's just wait till we hear more, because this was very confusing, and the way that they edited the show was intentionally very confusing. So in your shock, don't just jump to conclusions. 2, don't harass people. Like it's that simple. Like I mean, like
why not?
Yeah. Like you might think that Carla is, to blame. You might feel like, Jesse should have done better. That's fine. Don't at them. At me. That's fine. I can take it. Like these people, this is a really a big emotional experience for them. Like Survivor is legitimately traumatizing, just like playing professional sports and stuff. And I know you could say, well, they're on TV, they get to play Survivor. Like, oh, they're like millionaires playing baseball. Like that kind of stuff does a ton of damage to your nervous system and the way you operate as a human. And so just, take that to the private group chat, your feelings, and just leave it there. So again, turning this into a PSA, following Hopi here, but just I don't get it. Let's just hold off. I'm very curious, and I will be the first one to jump on board that the jury messed up and was sexist or something if evidence comes out like that. But I really highly doubt that's the case based on the people that they're claiming to be these anti-women figures on the jury. Both went to UC Berkeley. Both have postgraduate degrees. These are liberal, highly educated people. It's not the flex you think it is, to bash on them. So anyways, it's just, it doesn't make sense to me, the narrative that the jury was misogynist. So anyways, that's my take.
Emily.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, this is a very nice conversation, and I'm so glad that we're all together. I'm gonna start with that because I love you all dearly. I think that I definitely, it's not the worst season ever. For me, it was very frustrating to watch as a viewer because it was a very incredibly slow burn. Then we got to the merge, and then we had to wait until the double elimination for any sort of power dynamics to shift. And then I was like, oh shit, here we go. Things are getting crazy. All the big heads are getting voted out. Oh man, this looks like Jesse's game to win. And then all of a sudden it's just this rando, so it was building up to a Gabler. You know what I mean? So to me, I feel like there's a lot to learn from this season, both as just a viewer and as a fan of the show. But I'm excited to move because 44 looks really great. So I'm excited for 44. I'm excited to not watch 43 anymore. Does that make sense?
No, yeah. For me personally, I agree with most of what everyone is saying. I think it was a slow burn. I think that when it was good, it was really good. I think that we will see 2 to 3 people back from this season. As everyone knows now, whenever I finish the season of Survivor, I have to rate it and rank it. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5, and I have it currently in 30th place, right behind Game Changers and right above HHH. I think that overall, this is a season that I would recommend to people. There's only 3 seasons that I wouldn't recommend, which is so crazy to me that these people will not shut up about how this is the worst. I really, and it's so frustrating because I'm a troll at heart, and I when I was younger I would have gone on to other people's posts and been overly pro Gabler just for shits and gigs. I don't want to do that because one, I don't have the mental health to deal with the backlash behind that. But 2, I'm not a Gabler fan, so I just kind of wanted to just fuck about it. But overall, it was a fine season. It was meh, all of that. Gabler happened. I'm excited for 44. I think that when we eventually look back on these first 4 seasons post COVID, let's say these first 3, because 44 hasn't happened yet. I would say it goes 42, 43, 41 for me personally. I think 42 is the best of the 3. I think that 43, and not to say that 41 sucks, because it doesn't, but I think that 42 is the best that we have gotten so far. So I'm excited for 44. I want to thank you all for continuing to say yes to come on this. I want to thank everyone for being in the chats all season, supporting. I will say that, me and Emily's schedules were all types of screwed up this season, so we couldn't have anyone join us all season because we would just kind of schedule last minute to record. It'll be a lot easier in the spring because our schedules are going to be the same. So I'm excited to have not only people from this panel, but other folks that we've had on in the past back. I don't think we have any big projects coming up in the off season. I still really want to do like a Survivor Crushes panel, just have everyone on and we just talk about our crushes for an hour.
Can we do it for Valentine's Day? Can we do it for Valentine's Day?
Oh, goodness, we could do it for Valentine's Day.
Let's do it. Okay, you're all invited. You have no plans.
Josh, do you wanna chill right quick?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. My baby, I'm having a child that is due on Valentine's Day, so I probably will not make that panel.
Oh, that's not what I
Bring
was.
the baby.
No. I know that's not what you were saying. I'm plugging my baby. Okay, Coach Drew. All right. Survivor casting. If you're watching, I know you're casting children these days. Okay, he's gonna be, about 1 month old when season 45 is casting. All right. But
You can say he's 15.
Yeah.
Like Sam.
Like Sammy. Exactly. No, but you can find me on Twitter at Josh Kettles, fighting off all the Cassidy profile pick trolls. And then, as always, you can also find me at Fupasu, the Future Past Survivor Cast. Just Google it; it'll come up. Where I'm about to release a very long episode where I also interviewed about 5 or 6 people for that. It just got their different takes and putting it all together in about a hour and a half episode.
Okay. Well, thank you all. We will see everyone at some point before the next season. I'm also another. I guess I could do this too. My season of Survivor New York starts December 30th. The episodes are coming out. I know that Silent Podcasts are doing recap episodes and exit interviews. So subscribe to them and also subscribe to Survivor New York to see how I do in a 2-day game. It's fun. But anyway, thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you guys in Survivor 44.